Hi, I'm Penn, and this is my partner, Teller. We're Penn and Teller, and this is a show about theater. But we're on television. We made an elephant appear, a cheap television trick. But we've got something better. Watch this. Anybody want to see a magic trick? Come over here. I'm going to show you a magic trick. Come here. Anybody want to see a magic trick? Come on, gather around. He's going to do a magic trick here. Just gather right in here. Come on, get right in here, right in the front here. Come on, everybody come around. I'm going to do a little magic trick for you here in the rain. Come on in here, okay? Okay, kids, I want to show you something. Look at our hands, everybody. Hands are empty. Okay? Watch this closely. Okay? Okay? Now, kid, reach in there. Make sure there's nothing there. Ah! Just kidding. Reach in there. Make sure there's nothing there. Anything in there? Nothing in there? No. Just reach. Let's see something. Reach in there. Would you, man? Nothing in there? No. Reach in there. Would you please, sir? Just reach there. Anything in there? Nothing. Okay. Okay. Now watch this. Watch closely. Watch closely.
Oh, how cute.
Now this feels like it's live. But imagine you were right here. Imagine you were this guy, and we were doing it right in your face. That's live theater. We're going to meet a director, Julie Taymor, who started doing shows in her backyard when she was a kid, and now she's directing The Tempest by William Shakespeare.
Theater is all of the arts combined. The theater is music, it's dance, it's acting, it's visual painting, it's sculpture, it's lighting, it's space. Therefore, all of those particular things become the play.
We'll let it happen for a moment, and then Valerie will give some huge crack of lightning and thunder. The sail will release, and as the thing releases, the light goes out, and he exits. He exits when the sail exits, and what is left there is the ship burning. Just the thing.
A director directs, meaning channels the ideas. You've got designers and actors, producers, sound people, music people. You've got a whole troupe of people that you have to organize. You also have a play that can be interpreted and told in many ways, especially when you're dealing with a classical play like The Tempest, Shakespeare. It's been done many times. Your job as a director is to decide how are we going to not only visualize these incredible scenes that are in it, but what are these characters really like?
This guy's name is Prospero. He used to be a duke, but 12 years ago, his brother cheated him out of his dukedom and put him out to sea in a small boat to die. Instead, he ended up on this island. He learned how to be a magician here, and this is his magic stick. As the play begins, Prospero is using his magic to stir up a huge storm. He wants to wreck his brother's ship on the island so he can finally get revenge.
Now, Prospero, his dukedom was taken away from him. But then he's on this island, and he's doing the same thing to two inhabitants of the island. The spirit Ariel, who he says he saved, but now in saving Ariel, he has made her his own slave.
Approach my Ariel, come.
All hail, great master! Grave sir, hail! I come to answer thy best pleasure, be it to fly, to swim, to dive into the fire, to ride on the curled clouds, task Ariel and all his qualities. Task Ariel and all his qualities.
Ariel is described as a spirit. And I kept wondering, well, how do you really get to the essence of spirit?
Waves tremble, yea.
And I thought of, what if just the other hand, that the puppet head and the human hand and how it related to each other would give so much, that all of the expression would be in this moving hand. It could be defiant in relationship. It could be frightened. It could be scared. That this, with this face, could express all of that human emotion that this spirit has, and yet it's not a human.
What is thou canst demand?
My liberty!
Before the time be out, no more.
I prithee, remember, I have done thee worthy service.
Dost thou forget from what a torment I did free thee?
No.
Thou dost.
I do not, sir.
Thou liest.
So it's almost more moving and more touching, and will affect the audience more, that it's this little piece of nothing. You know, it's just scholastic. It's like paper mache, that it absolutely is nothing more than an object that is brought to life by an actress's talent, by her ability to manipulate it, and that it has so much humanity through the movement. To me, this is sort of the essence of theater.
Pardon, master. I will be correspondent to command and do my spriting gently.
Do so.
Using his magic, Prospero makes Ariel invisible and sends her off to spy on the men who are now shipwrecked on the island.
What shall I do? Say what? What shall I do?
Go. Make thyself like a nymph of the sea. Be subject to no sight but thine and mine. Invisible to every eyeball else.
Shakespeare is very attractive to me because it is so large. You've got spirits of the air and monsters of the earth. You've got murders being plotted. It's huge. I mean, one of the beauties of Shakespeare is that he wasn't afraid to write enormous stories. He didn't have film and television, so the big stories had to be done on the stage. And the artists always, through the centuries, had to find a way to approach how do you do that technically. You work with the designer on the costumes and with the designer on the sets, and that happens very early. In this production, Skip did the sets and the costumes with a lot of collaboration. I mean, we've worked together on 6 or 7 productions.
That's what, yeah, the spandex.
You have to use all the means you can through your imagination to create the illusion of being somewhere where we obviously aren't, and the audience is going to accept it. In The Tempest, Prospero was on an island. So when I thought about, okay, it's an island. Now, what is the essence of an island? It's sand. Sand in isolation.
Julie had a very strong idea about the island having a lot to do with sand. We didn't know quite how to shape that or what shape that would take. I realized that I needed the sand to angle back. So what I needed to do was create distance underneath the stage that somebody could crawl through the sand, which is how Caliban makes his first entrance.
As wicked dew as air my mother brushed with raven's feather.
Caliban is the resident inhabitant of the island that Prospero comes to. He is the king of the island. He represents the island. And in the first scene, Caliban comes through the earth. He comes from below. Where Ariel comes from the air, Caliban comes through the earth.
Come forth, I say, there's other business for thee.
Okay, stop. In the beginning, when Prospero is saying, "What ho, Caliban," he doesn't know where Caliban is. He's somewhere in the earth. So as far as he could pop up right in front of you. He could be under your feet. So you always will sort of hide and stay behind him, okay? All right, so,
What ho, slave?
yes, what ho, slave.
What ho, slave? Caliban.
Before Prospero came, Caliban ruled this island. Prospero got angry with Caliban and used his magic powers to make him his slave.
Tortoise, when? Come thou, tortoise, when?
Caliban is one of the few characters who's actually described in Shakespeare's play. And he's described as a deformed, savage monster, basically.
Drop on you both!
And I took a very unusual tack with my interpretation of Caliban. I thought that I took the line in the play where Caliban says, "Here I am stymied, you have stymied me in this hard rock," and I am really, meaning I am, to be stymied is to be stuck, to be imprisoned.
And here, you style me in this hard rock, whilst you do keep from me the rest of the island.
So I thought, well, this is a very simplistic idea. What if I put Caliban in a rock? So I thought, well, I had been looking at pictures, and I'd seen these incredible photographs of the mudmen of New Guinea. And I looked, and on their head were these, what were clay masks, they were rocks. And what you have in this rock is 2 eyes and a hole for the mouth and 2 holes for the ears. And that's it. It's about the most primitive of masks you could possibly have.
And here, you style me in this hard rock, whilst you do keep from me the rest of the isle.
Thou most lying slave.
It's probably much harder to read Shakespeare than to see Shakespeare. You don't have to understand every word to understand what a person is talking about. For instance, you have Caliban saying, "You taught me about the bigger light." What is the bigger light? What is the bigger light? Is it a light bulb? What is it? Well, in fact, the bigger light is the sun. And what Caliban has done is he's really described the sun of what it is. It's the big, big light up there. So in a way, Shakespeare is more simple than we are. What is the sun? The sun is the bigger light. Now, the audience won't know that unless they see potentially the actor gesturing.
And teach me how to name the bigger light, and how the less that burn by day and night. And then I loved thee.
What I'd like to do right now is for Reggie and Kelly to play a little bit. Let's work with the masks a little bit. And then we'll get into the scene, okay?
Trinculo is the court jester. He works for Prospero's brother. His partner is Stefano, the butler. These 2 guys are the clowns.
And what I wanted to do with these 2 actors was I wanted to create a larger-than-life mask for their face. With Trinculo, he somehow was a little rodent-like, and his nose was kind of like leading him along and sniffing out the situation, and his teeth, his buck teeth, were a little bit like a rat. So I took life casts off the actors' faces, and I sculpted these so that these could fit, and that they would be able to talk, and that the nose, this is when they start to learn how to work with these, they find what is the feature that is the predominant feature which will lead them in movement.
That's fabulous. How about your tongue? That's wonderful. Like, especially when you're panting for the wine. You're thirsty.
Oh.
That's a beautiful, really, pull it there. That overbite.
Stefano.
Here's neither bush chub to bear off any weather at all. And another storm brewing.
A lot of what the character is how they're dressed. The costumes say everything about the character because you're not going to have a lot of costume changes. It's not like they're going to wear a different outfit for the morning and a different outfit for the evening.
I mean, I think it should look like he went through this incredible hurricane and half his clothes just blew right off of him. I mean, I love the
Oh, I
folds
love the
going
idea
through.
of an arm being ripped off. That's
If it should thunder as it did before, I know not where to hide my head. Yon same cloud cannot choose but fall by pailfuls. What have we here?
In this scene, Trinculo stumbles over Caliban, who's hiding. Caliban doesn't know about the shipwreck, and he thinks Trinculo is one of Prospero's evil spirits who's come to pester him.
The storm has come again! My best way is to creep under his gabardine. There is no other shelter hereabout. Misery acquaints a man with strange bedfellows.
I shall no more to sea, here shall I die a sore. I'll bring these when drafts go, and I...
The second time we see Caliban, he's met up with Trinculo and Stefano, who are both drunk. These three are about to stir up a lot of trouble.
All of a sudden, Caliban is seduced into thinking that these are going to be his liberators.
Ah! I prithee, now lead the way without any more talking.
And these fools, who are also thinking of taking over, of getting power, they decide to get Caliban to help them take over the island.
Farewell!
And at the end of that scene, he takes the logs that he's been carrying for Prospero, which are the symbol of his enslavement, and he actually takes one of the logs and he breaks open his head.
Howling monster! A drunken monster!
No more than I'll make for fish. No fetching, firing, and requiring. Nor stay, grain, sharing.
This is perfect for Caliban because he's going to get back at Prospero. Well, this is great. He's now got these two guys, and they're going to murder Prospero, and that'll free Caliban forever.
Freedom! Freedom! Hide, freedom! Oh, brave monster! Lead the way!
And then instead of making a very pronounced sneaking
you just
thing,
slide in.
if I just kind of glide
Yeah, that'll be
over,
nice.
And then,
Thou liest.
Right. Yeah. That's great.
Thou liest, thou canst not.
What a bandit is this?
Remember, Prospero has made Ariel invisible. These guys can hear her, but they can't see her.
Did I? I did nothing. I'll stand farther off.
Didst thou not say he lied?
Thou liest.
Do I? Yes, that's right.
Right. Take this
Yes.
and that. Give me the lie another time.
Give me the lie another time.
I did not give the lie! What, are your wits and hearing too? A box on your bottle and the devil take your finger!
And then Caliban, you're here and you're laughing at that, right? You love that he's laughing. And then you say, make him go further.
Prithee now, stand further off. Come, proceed. Why, as I told thee, 'tis a custom with him in the afternoon to sleep. There.
As Ariel listens in, Caliban and Stefano plot to murder Prospero.
Or, with a luck, batter his skull, or punch him with a stake, or cut his weasand with thy knife.
Monster, I will kill this man. His daughter and I will be king and queen, and Trinculo and thyself shall be the viceroys.
Dost thou not like the plot, Trinculo?
Excellent.
Give me thy hand.
Oh, I'm sorry I beat thee.
Hey, within this half hour will he be asleep? Wilt thou destroy him then?
Aye, on mine honor.
This will I tell my master.
Actors take 10 minutes and we'll move to the clothesline. We're going to do the clothesline and the dogs next.
And Skip, we need to have different clothespins because these don't work. Technical rehearsals are the 3 days or so before you open your play. It's not an actor's time. They hate this time because the director is spending all their time with the lighting designer, the costume designer, the set designer in making their work happen. This is their time.
Okay, so the end of the scene.
The dark.
Okay, see, if we stay dark, then that's better for them.
Then stay dark and then go into a change.
Theater magic, I think, has to do with taking very ordinary things and making extraordinary things happen with them. And for me, lighting is all about magic because you can't hold it, you can't touch it. It's an energy that's created that you physically can't handle. Through the use of color or direction, it can be a hostile place or a friendly place or a hot place or a cold place, or it can just be a magical place.
In The Tempest, it's all about magic. Prospero's magic. He can delight and he can terrorize, and he can do it in a second. He can make the change happen for a second. In a second. So our challenge became, how do we do that and make you in the audience feel the same thing?
Hey, mountain
Ariel tells Prospero about the plot to kill him, so he sends his magic dogs to scare his enemies.
Silva! There she goes! Silva!
Live theater is very exciting. Though the production can be repeated again and again, it will never be the same. It's not canned, it's not frozen. So you have that sense of danger when something is live.
I'll break my staff, bury it certain fathoms in the earth, and deeper than did ever plummet sound, I'll drown my book.
Prospero learns that he has actually abused his power. So at the very end of the play, he gives up his power through the giving up of magic. And it's not necessarily a happy moment. It's there's a bitterness there at the very end. It's something he has to do.
Fare thou well.
Prospero lifts off the hood, off of the actress, and for the first time the audience sees her face. At this point, she's liberated. She's Louise, and she gets to see the audience. I've been in a play, I've finished my job, I'm free, I've been the stage manager and the assistant to Prospero, and I'm going home. And she runs out of the audience.
We showed that with all this magic that I pulled you into this world, that we as a team created and pulled you in, was nothing more than sand. And in all that, you just went on an incredible journey. I think that's the beauty of theater. I think that's what's so wonderful.
excellent. That was really excellent.
Have to bow. Thank you very much.
What about your teeth? I need to go to the dentist. Big time.
Say something.
That's it. Now I must go wash.
Yes. That was live theater. This is television. Television is no big deal. Television is a snap. Keep on thinking.
Ah. Uh-huh. Oh. Ah. Ah.
Hi, I'm Penn, and this is my partner, Teller. We are Penn and Teller, and this show is about balance and about how sculptors work with the principle of balance in their sculpture, and how some sculptors like to make pieces that look very balanced, some like to make pieces that look precariously balanced, and some like to make pieces that just look like they're going to fall down. In this show, we're going to talk a lot about balance.
Okay, here we have me balancing in the vertical position. You see, you can't even see it, but I'm actually using my hands and my legs all the time to balance, but I'll accentuate that. Look, I'm balancing with my leg and my two arms. Take away the leg. Okay, that makes it much harder. You'll see more movement in the arms now. Then I take away one arm. Oh, that's much harder. Now, if I take away the other arm, I get really in trouble. Now, do you see how I had to use all three things to save myself from falling on the floor? And that's one of the principles, is keeping the body straight and using these extremities for balance. Okay, so one other aspect is counterbalance. Now, for example, I can balance on one foot. I can fold my arms because I'm using my leg as a balance. Now, to get a good balance, I could take my arm out, and that's much steadier because there's a kind of counterbalance between this leg and this arm. If I put this arm out, I'm going to fall off because all the weight is on one side. So counterbalance is there. Okay, so now you know that I can walk along the wire, I can turn, and I can run back to the platform again. It's all very simple. However, sometimes you see people who are trying to entertain you and make it more exciting for you, and they will pretend to do things that you think are impossible. So, for example, I'm going to walk out on the... Oh, no, my goodness. Oh, that was frightening. Here we go. Oh. I'll put my foot very tentatively because this is the first time I've ever done this. And there's the other foot. And there... Oh, no, wait. No. It may appear that I'm really off balance, but in actual fact, I'm perfectly on balance. And then I can walk along a little further, and then trip. Oh, oh my goodness. What do I do? I'm in control all the time, you see.
In the sculpture garden of the Museum of Modern Art in New York City. Now, this piece is really stable. Physical balance is important, but sculptors aren't limited to making sculptures that are physically balanced. They like to play visually with that curve between balance and imbalance. It really comes down to how do you want your piece to look? Balanced? Balanced but precarious? I don't know. How long can you stand on one foot in cowboy boots, huh? Balanced. Precarious. Or do you want them to look like they're falling down? Now, what stops these things from really falling over? Well, sculptors have to support these precarious or falling sculptures, or gravity will just pull them right down. We're going to meet sculptor Nancy Graves. She makes her sculptures out of some very unexpected things. And she loves to play with the ideas of balance and imbalance.
How are we anchoring this finally? What was the joint here? Do you remember?
Nancy's in the middle of making a sculpture that has a clock in it. Even though it may not look like it, every single part of the sculpture is made of metal. The sculpture stands on 4 legs, and when it's finished, it'll tick and tell the right time.
Well, you have to determine the height of whatever that mechanism is.
Right.
This is a 2-dimensional drawing of something that's in 3 dimensions. And in it, I show each of the different parts, and in particular, the bases. The head of Nefertiti, she's standing upside down. And there's a cornice which extends down to the floor, which zigzag through the piece and serve to hold individual parts in place. Then there's the head of Ramses II. Now, I decided at a point when I was putting the piece together that I wanted it to be fuller, and so in order to do that, I wanted to add a fourth leg. So this piece has 4 legs, which greatly helped the piece from falling over, because, of course, the strength of the 3 bases and now the 4th base are what determine what could be built on top of it.
Well, let's cut this. We'll shift that out. We'll pull this off, and you can start telling us how to move that.
An additional element that I wanted to use was a rope, which would run through the piece in contrast to the zigzag, and this would act as a kind of support. We'll play with it and see what happens. Maybe we'll not need to damage any further. It's not unusual to have to make changes along the way. As the piece is coming together, sometimes the things I plan don't quite work, and I have to make structural changes. Is that better?
Structurally, it's a lot better.
This. You cut it here, and then this will come over, this part will be hitting here, and then that will join there. That's
okay.
Again. All right. I think that's good.
Okay.
You don't have to hold any more, Nick. You're off duty.
I'm going to attack it a little bit right up here.
After making our changes, we then weld the various elements together. Welding is like glue, only it's like the strongest glue, and it will never come apart when something's welded, so that it's possible to make parts of a sculpture appear to be at odd angles, to be tilting in ways that are unexpected, which causes one to think, well, now, why is that standing up there?
Part of it, we can adjust these too up there.
It could even, the canopy can come even more.
Over to you?
Yeah, to me, this one, that's it. In making this sculpture, my goal is to make it look as off balance as possible and yet be balanced. Now, can your part, Ken, come over to me more? Yeah. Now get the canopy way over here. Bring it, I want it off center, that's what I'm trying to do, and you're centering everything. But the problem is that gravity is pulling each of these elements downward. The heavier the element, the harder it is to put it off balance.
Structure getting high.
No structure? Well, I'm trying to make it appear as weightless as possible, as if it's defying gravity. In this case, I'm going to have to compromise. Why don't you do this? Don't tip it. Keep it the same plane.
Just lower the whole deal?
Lower the aloe a little. Down on your left. The balance is, that's better. Now we're going to mark this.
Let's just weld it. Let's weld it in place.
It's pretty heavy to hold on with this.
Sometimes I wonder what it would be like to make a piece of sculpture on the moon. There's much less gravity there.
Okay. Yeah. Let's just see what it looks like.
Okay. Yeah, that'll hold.
Right?
Okay?
Good.
So that's solved.
We all like balance because our bodies are balanced, pretty much the same, left and right. Let's have a vertical axis line, please. Thank you. Teller is balanced. He has about the same amount of weight on each side. He's also symmetrical. Both sides are pretty much identical. A lot of buildings and pieces of sculpture are designed to be symmetrical. Perfect symmetry feels calm, comfortable, dignified. But if that's all we ever saw or felt, we'd be bored. But things can be balanced in other ways. I am balanced, but not balanced symmetrically. Could I have the axis line, please? Thank you. There seems to be the same amount of weight on either side, but both sides are not identical. So, That's symmetrical and asymmetrical balance. I'm Penn, and I have a squirrel on my head. A thing can be perfectly balanced, and yet you get the feeling that it could tip over at any moment. Sculptors play with balance by arranging what's up and what's down.
If what's down, the base, is bigger than what's up, it looks very stable. But the smaller the base, the tippier a sculpture looks.
As usual, we're cheating.
Yeah!
Hi, I'm Marilyn Ono, and I use the computer to create images. Sculpture exists in 3 dimensions. You can walk around it and have different views of the sculpture. My screen is flat, but I can still show you some principles of sculpture and balance. These lines represent the horizontal axis and the vertical axis. They help us understand gravity and balance. If I put more weight below the horizontal axis, the sculpture is very stable and calm. If I put more weight above the horizontal axis, the sculpture looks very tippy. This is the vertical axis. If there's the same amount of weight on both sides of this line, the sculpture seems very balanced. Let's see what happens when I take a sculpture which is balanced along the vertical axis and move the pieces off balance. If there's more weight on one side than the other, it looks very imbalanced. It might even tip over. But sculptures do have to stand up. They can't really fall over. Sometimes you can see the support. And sometimes it's hidden.
But I can tell you right now, like that. This sculpture looks as if it shouldn't stand up. And if it were made of the actual materials that the molds were made from, these things would not support each other. But because they're made in metal, one can create something that will stand up and that asks questions as to why is this hand being put in this position and what is its function. It's not just there because I like hands, it's there because it has a job to do, and its job is to hold up this piece of molding and to hold the clock in place, ultimately. It's not long enough, so bring it up. The angles, you've got to have the angle like that. All right, so we'll get our man Brad to debunk that. Hold that up, though, I want to go over. So everything has a function. Each piece may be placed at an angle that looks precarious and may look like it's made of something that won't bear any weight. But of course, it's been cast in bronze and welded into position. After we get this done, should we start with the top? This is a sculpture full of surprises. Why would this coconut palm in its lifetime ever expect to be joining Nefertiti to Ramses II? And then why should a pendulum be made of a fern leaf?
Counterbalance.
The answer to this question is because I like to try and do things that have never been done before and to ask questions about what can be art and what can be sculpture. And then those 2 large bananas. I like to use forms that have a history of their own. Things that are familiar and yet somehow strange, because they're mixed with other things in ways you don't expect. I particularly wanted forms from nature in this piece. Got to get the right form so that it looks in scale for the piece.
It's like you'd always cast 2 or 3 bananas and just keep
Singly.
adding them and
add
shifting
them
them.
on.
So, are there some long ones in that file?
There you go, bronze banana.
Enough talk about balance. Let's talk about falling. Sculptors play on something that you know, that when something isn't balanced, it ought to be moving. Ha! It ought to be moving. It ought to be moving. You see, even when a piece doesn't move, sculptors often want you to feel movement.
So let's see how a couple of, I can't see where they join. Can you? Where they hit?
Point at it. You hold it there, and then I'll take over.
All right.
You like to have it there?
Why do the bananas not fall off? They appear to be angling out into space. It's because they're bronze welded to bronze, and the weld of the bronze makes them very, very strong, so that they appear to defy gravity. These are up very high, so I guess we ought to bang them down. Can you bang them down a little? That's good. Let me see the profile. I think they look okay. When we do my interest is to create balance through imbalance. Balance has to do with weight. Balance has to do with mass. Balance has to do with placement. Like here and just bump it up. And then finally, what affects the seeing of the whole is color. And color achieves another kind of harmony or visual balance. This is nice with the bronze color coming through. It's really beautiful. I'm trying to keep as much of the bronze as possible. But there will be details which will start working in certain areas. There'll be different rhythms that are created by color. So we'll do the banana next. Now we got this gold. Can you get the gold? In the next one, I think it would be this purple. The use of colors and their placement causes the eye, if you follow a particular color, to move through space and through the sculpture. If you follow, for example, the reds, let's take this red here, and your eye moves with it, you see that if you follow, you go right through the spiral, which is a support. It's like a vertebral column or an armature for the sculpture. And then you come up to a red here, which you may not see so clearly from this view, but if you walk around the piece, you'll see this red. And your eye pretty much has gone through the whole sculpture just by taking the journey of red. So there's a visual balance which is created by color as well as by form.
It sort of looks like someone's having a dream, and his dream is like ticking. That stuff over there looks like snowflakes.
These are sort of like snowflakes, but I also think they're sort of just like a pattern. It's sort of holding up the rope, which the rope is actually holding up everything.
Yeah.
And so if it was just a regular rope, the whole thing would probably collapse. And so it sort of seems like everything is just hanging in midair.
It actually looks like ancient Greece when it was falling apart, when all the buildings were falling down. This could be like a clock. It would be like the only thing left that was moving.
Well, we've tried to be very clear about how balance works. We've talked about symmetry and asymmetry, standing up and falling over, and all the stages in between. But of course, artists, as usual, are busy trying to fool your eye. They like to make a thing look one way when it's really another. Keep thinking. Hi, I'm Penn, and this is my partner, Teller. We are Penn and Teller, and this is a program about the art of photography. I mean, you've all seen photographs in magazines and newspapers and even in museums, so what's the big deal? Well, photographers, just like other artists, try and show you something that they think is special or important about the world. And they do this by putting a frame around what they want you to see. They have to decide what they're going to put into their pictures and what they're going to leave out. For example, the frame of this picture of us is the edge of your TV screen. The TV camera operator has thought about this frame and carefully chosen exactly what to put inside it and what to leave out.
What's in? What's out? You look at the big picture, you think you've seen it all. Could be you'd see it differently when focused in on small. One becomes a doctor, one's loss, another's find. A goofy kid becomes a star. A close-up aims your mind. A dog may simply be a dog, depends on how you see a dog. What's in, what's out, determines what it's all about. Sometimes what shows is just eyes and noses. The frame is the name of the game. Look at another picture and let that camera zoom. Frame in on small groups so you'll see what fits right in with whom. Ice cream's meant for sharing, and friends for sharing too. The close-ups on relationships. What kind of dog are you? Musicians try to make you hear. The camera makes musicians clear. What's in, what's out, determines what it's all about. Not coincidental, it's all instrumental. The frame is the name of the game. You look at any picture, you get just what you see. But leave a part outside the frame, you change reality. Is that a real doctor? Is he really on the ball? That girl who's looking so relaxed, well, that's not true at all. The lens defines the art of dance by looking at some part of dance. What's in, what's out, determines what it's all about. Pictures proclaim the photographer's aim. The frame is the name of the game.
Now we're going to talk about the art of photography. Teller is running the camera, and he has taken the edge of the picture and put it here and here. That's called the frame. And framing is very important because what's inside the frame is in the picture, and what's outside the frame isn't. This is true for painting, drawing, and photographs. We think of photographs as being somehow more real than, say, paintings or drawings, but photographers, like all artists, have to choose what particular piece of the world they want you to see. Even if a photographer were to show you a big, wide picture, they still, that's good. Excuse me. Even if a photographer were to show you a picture of the whole big studio, they would still not be showing you the whole world. They would be choosing the part of it they want you to look at. Now, a good photographer would be framing me now, because the camera person would notice that I'm the one talking, and therefore I should be the center of attention in this particular picture. When photographers compose their photographs, they're making choices, pointing out to you what interests them about the subjects. Teller, those aren't your potato chips. In this show, we'll talk about what photographers might be thinking when they make these choices in their framing. Carrie Mae Weems is a photographer whose photographs have hung in museums and been printed in books and in magazines. She's interested in framing things, often ordinary things in ways that make you think about them differently. So the most important thing to know is that to photographers, what's in the frame is what's the most important.
Come this way and look this way and look through my frame, right? You can look through my frame. What am I framing?
Today, Carrie Mae Weens is going to show these kids how to look at the world in a new way.
To point it down, maybe I don't want to see all of that I'm seeing right through my frame. You can use your frames in the same way. Isolate out for yourself what rests inside your frame and what exists outside of it. So let's start off down here. Let's go down here. That's a wonderful group of trees. Maybe it might be sort of interesting if we just kind of all photographed around this area, using your frame to kind of map out for yourself how that final photograph is going to be framed. You know, or maybe I might again want to shift around just a little bit more, holding my frame up still, right? And getting something else, and sort of remaining on this. The only thing that's important in some ways, does the photograph in the end represent what you saw in your mind? I mean, you know, like for instance, if you were standing behind Mignon, and you're all photographing basically in this direction, right? Almost from the same vantage point, we'd have 4 different, completely different photographs.
That's the house of the tree that got some of the buildings. The whole building.
Yeah. I love this beach. Are there any big differences or major differences between what you see in the photograph on the right and the one you see on the left? Even though we basically took them from the same position. Huh? What are some of the differences?
She got the whole building. She was closer to there. And I was like down there, kind of.
Well, one of the things that's interesting is because you're shorter.
She's taller.
She did get a little bit
right?
more. She got a lot more grass.
Exactly, exactly. There's more in your foreground, which is very funny. Because how many of us think about our own height as determining what a photograph is going to look like in the end? How do you hold the camera? How do you position the camera so that something else starts to happen that you want to have happen, right? You can decide that, okay, this is where I'm located, I can decide that I'm going to tilt it up slightly, just a little bit more towards the sky, just a little bit more up off the ground so that there's not so much in the foreground, or actually going just the other way. Maybe what's in the foreground is even more important than what's in the background. This is a wonderful slide, isn't it? It's a terrific slide. What happens when you photograph, let's say if I decided to photograph it from here, what happens when I photograph it from this angle, and what happens when I walk up on it, right, and I get just a little closer, right? What happens when I start to isolate something out about it, a detail or something like that, huh? Okay? Now, the angle of view is completely up to you, and the distance is completely up to you, except that you have to make 2 photographs from 2 different distances, one closer and one further away. It's about taking your time, and circling around the thing that you are interested in photographing, and then deciding that that's where you want to take the picture from. You don't have to rush, in other words. You have all the time in the world. This is great, huh? It becomes like a completely abstract photograph because it's so close. A completely different photograph than this, huh? Completely different. This one makes you feel like there's a really long slide, you know?
It's funny how they all were at the top.
Isn't it? I mean, you all photograph from the same vantage point, but it's still very different, right? The photographs are not only different in terms of slight variations, right? In this case, there's slight variations, but all of them have a very different mood to them, don't they? What kind of mood does this photograph have? Eerie. Isn't it? It's eerie. There's something about it that just sort of makes me really tense and right in my stomach. It's very scary. Well, you said that you were interested in that kind of stuff.
This one kind of like makes me feel like I'm on a roller coaster.
Yeah. But you know, the funny thing about this is that we're on a children's playground, and yet each of you sort of photographed this like it's the fastest roller coaster ride in history or something, right? It's spinning, it's frightening, it's eerie, right? But you've taken something that's very, very simple, that's very, very ordinary, and made a completely different meaning out of it. 1,000 kids go up and down that slide all day long and are never afraid to do it. And all of a sudden you provide us with a photograph that makes us think about it one more time. You guys make great pictures.
Okay. Oh.
What's the problem, Aldo?
I'm trying to take a picture of my food, one that tells the world how I feel about it. It's just not working.
Move the camera closer.
That's a good idea, Eddie. Oh, it's still no good. It doesn't tell the whole food story. It looks too much like a commercial, Eddie. It doesn't tell the world what I think about my food. What am I going to do?
I have an idea, Aldo.
It's perfect, Eddie.
It does show everyone exactly how you feel about your dog food. The perfect relationship.
We thought we'd let you in on some of the tricks that photographers use to make you see things in new ways and also make you think. The first thing photographers think about is subject matter. What are they going to take a picture of? And once they decide on the subject matter, they have to pick the focal point. Focal point actually means the thing that you focus on. It's the thing the photographer wants to emphasize. Photographers have a few secrets about how to make you notice the focal point in their pictures, which is where they want you to look. They play around with a lot of the same things that painters and sculptors do. Size, for instance. If you want to emphasize something, one way to do it is to make it very big in the frame. When the subject's focal point takes up most of the frame, it becomes very important.
You can tell a lot about these people from their feet, but you can't really tell their personality from their feet.
She looks kind of scared, like she's watching out for something.
This reminds me of when a gust of wind comes and somebody's wearing one of those skirts.
I would say it looked like very long hair.
Now, you'd think that a photographer would know enough to put the focal point or the most important part of the picture in the middle, right? I mean, we all do that. Well, sometimes photographers don't. It's one of the tricks they use to get you to think about the things that they want you to think about. Instead of putting the most important thing, the focal point, in the middle of the frame, they sometimes put it close to one of the edges. This makes you think not only about the focal point, but also about what's in the rest of the frame, and also what the rest of the picture and the focal point have to do with one another.
Maybe he just built that building and he's admiring it.
This guy's got a really long way to go.
The photographer wanted to take a picture of the painter, but also wanted to see what the painter was painting.
Maybe they think that it's funny that maybe the photographer just caught them writing on the wall.
Now, sometimes photographers will emphasize what they want you to think about by not putting it in their picture, or by putting only a piece of it in their picture.
You can't see his face, so you have to guess what he's feeling.
I think that the coach is pointing somewhere. Number 28 is confused.
Is number 28 getting fired?
Another thing that photographers often do to get you to see things the way that they do is to use their frame to make you think about relationships. They want you to think about the relationship or connection between two or more people or things within the frame.
Those girls are going to school, and the ducks look like they're all going to school too. The lady isn't very interested in what her husband is taking a picture of. I think the bird is wondering what the pipe is.
Today, Carrie Mae Weems is photographing a folk artist's front yard.
I just love this place. Love this place. Part of what makes a successful photograph or image is how well you're able to see. Taking your time to look and to see what's there, and then deciding where you want to be relative to the object that you're photographing. If you can just make some of those sort of very simple decisions, you'll probably walk away with much more successful photographs. I like photographing things straight on. Trying to let the subject then speak for itself. Isn't this just an amazing piece? I mean, probably the most difficult thing for me in being in this place is really trying to figure out how to frame it, how to make it work, because there's so much and it's so tight. It's this sort of wonderful, wonderful world that's being created. All these sort of decisions that you have to make, like, what do you want to look at? What are you really looking at? What do you really want to describe about a thing, about a person. That's the hard part. How close do you want to be to it? How far away do you want to be from it? That also helps you decide what it is that you're looking at. You can look at things in so many different ways, so many different perspectives. Probably the most difficult part about photography is attempting to clarify that out of everything that you see, how do you give the picture an organization that wasn't necessarily there before? These are contact sheets. It gives me a record of everything that I photographed. And what I'm doing is looking over the contact sheet and trying to decide which photograph works best, and therefore which photograph I might want to print once I get into the darkroom. It's a way of narrowing down the selection process. So that again, you start looking and noticing your framing. I mean, there's a problem in here. So I'd probably want to get rid of some of that over there, and I might want to get rid of some of this over here so that I can concentrate just a little bit more in here on that image. There's a negative that's been placed into the enlarger, and we are cropping on the enlarger. As I cropped, actually, I'm trying to mirror the cropping that I did on the contact sheet. So I'll move the blades up slightly and get rid of some of that foreground. After you expose the negative onto light-sensitive paper, you place it in a chemical called the developer. Once the photographic paper goes into the developer, you rock it slightly, gently, and slowly but surely an image begins to emerge. Once it's developed, it takes about a minute and a half or so. You take it and you put it in the stop bath, and that stops the action, the development action. And then from there, you take it and you put it in the fixer. The fixer makes the image permanent so that you can then take the photograph out into the light and you can look at it. And then after you've done all that, you've got to wash it, and you've got to hang the photograph up to dry. The fact is that every single photograph, no matter who takes it, no matter when they take it, it's all about expressing an attitude, expressing an emotion, expressing an idea. And as a result of that, also expressing meaning, right? That it means something. That we're not looking at the real thing, that we're looking at representations of things, and we're looking at representations based on how we see the world and how we want to express it. Right. So you have to decide where you stand too. What kind of person are you? What are you trying to get across? What are you trying to convey? For instance, this photograph of my mom. I wanted to make it like a portrait of her at work. What I'm trying to do is to impart a certain amount of information and a certain kind of experience to the viewer.
So photographers, like painters, look at the world, choose bits of it to show you, and stick them in a frame in ways that can surprise you, reassure you, or give you a jolt. Keep on thinking.
A very well-framed composition, don't you think?